A young heir and a quiet ceramic artist signed a paper marriage worth $90 million. Certain they would walk away the moment the clock ran out. 12 months later, neither of them could remember how to let go. The story begins with a clause buried deep inside the final will of an old shipping tycoon named Edward Castellano. The clause was short, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. His only grandson, Adrian Castellano, would not inherit a single dollar of the family fortune, unless he stayed married to one woman for 12 unbroken months before his 30th birthday. Adrian read those words 3 times the night the lawyer handed him the file, and each time the air in the room grew a little thinner. He needed the money. He had less than a year, so he made a quiet decision in the dark of his Miami study, and the consequences would take a lifetime to unfold. He hired a woman he had never met. Her name was Lena Brooks, a ceramic artist from a narrow studio in Brooklyn, 30 years old, with hands that always carried the faint pale dust of clay. He paid her $1 million to wear his ring and share his last name. Neither of them suspected what the silence between them would eventually become. Adrian Castellano had grown up beneath the long shadow of his grandfather Edward, who had built a global shipping empire from a single rusting boat in Tampa Bay back in 1957. Edward had been a stubborn man with old-world ideas, and he had believed without question that every Castellano heir should be married before 30. When he died in the autumn of 2024, the will he left behind closed every door but one. Adrian was 29. He was alone. He had less than 15 months to find a wife who would not ask too many questions. The contract was drawn by a careful lawyer named Margaret Cole, and every clause was sharper than the last. The marriage had to look real on paper. The couple had to live beneath one roof. They had to be photographed in soft public places, smiling, ordinary, in love. The love itself, however, was not required. Adrian placed a discreet ad inside a private network for actresses and models. Lena answered within a week. Her grandmother was dying slowly in a small hospital outside Albany, and the bills had begun to outrun her. She read the offer twice, and then signed her name. The numbers made sense. The risks seemed survivable. Neither one of them knew that the most dangerous thing in the room was not the money, but the slow, patient gravity that pulls two strangers toward one another when they are forced to share a doorway, a hallway, a kitchen, a life. The contract was signed on the 28th of April, 2025. 3 days later, they were married in a quiet Miami courthouse, with no rings of meaning and no music and no witnesses but a city clerk who had seen 1,000 stranger things. The first 3 months drifted past like a held breath. They lived inside Adrian's beach house, 2 strangers separated by long marble hallways and the slow hush of the ocean beyond the glass. He gave her the master suite and took the guest room without ceremony. They cooked side by side without touching, posted soft pretend photographs for his family, and attended his cousin's wedding with their fingers laced for the cameras and nothing behind it. Behind closed doors, they were polite. They were careful. They were almost invisible to one another. Then, slowly, the wall began to thin. Around the 4th month, Lena fell ill in the middle of the night with a fever that would not break. Adrian drove her to the hospital through a hot Miami rain and sat in a stiff plastic chair until the sky turned gray at the edges. She woke to find him still there, jacket folded beneath his head, a paper cup of cold coffee untouched on the floor beside his shoe. A week later, she pressed a small, hand-thrown ceramic mug into his palm without a word. He placed it on his desk that afternoon. It is still there, even now. By the 5th month, they were sharing dinner every evening. By the 6th, the air had begun to soften between them, and a careful, quiet laughter found its way into the spaces where silence used to live. They began to linger in doorways. Their eyes began to hold a beat too long. Neither of them spoke of it. Neither of them dared. The 7th month broke the dam. Adrian's father, Marco Castellano, was rushed into surgery after a sudden heart attack, and Lena flew to the hospital at Adrian's side without being asked. In the cold blue light of a private waiting room, she reached for his hand. She did not let go for 6 hours. Something inside Adrian, something older than the contract, older than the inheritance, older than any of his careful plans, quietly came apart in her grip. There were secrets all around them in those days, and they did not know it. Marco had known the whole truth from the very beginning. He had read his father's will weeks before Adrian ever opened the file, and he had recognized the clause for what it was. He had quietly let his son make the deal anyway, because 50 years earlier Marco himself had been married off in a similar fashion. a careful arrangement between two wealthy families. He had fallen in love with Adrian's mother within their first year together. He had stayed in love with her for 40 more. He never told his son any of this. He watched the contract unfold from a careful distance, with a small, knowing smile, and he hoped Lena was hiding a quieter secret of her own. Her ceramics had been climbing the radar of a major Miami gallery for years, and a private invitation for a solo show in 2026 had been waiting in her inbox since the second month of the marriage. She had turned down every interview, every feature, every spotlight. By the 8th month, she had enough money of her own. She did not need the contract anymore. She did not need Adrian's name. She stayed because somewhere along the long hallway of his beach house she had stopped pretending to live there. By the 11th month, the line between performance and truth had dissolved entirely. They held hands in public for no audience but themselves. They had quietly moved into the same bedroom, where the morning light fell across the same pillow, and neither of them mentioned the contract anymore. The clock kept ticking toward May 1st, 2026, and the fear neither would nay began to circle the edges of the house. 3 days before the deadline, Adrian opened a drawer he had not opened in months and found the original contract waiting for him. He sat with it at the kitchen counter and read it again under the low morning light. A clause he had forgotten caught his eye, a small, quiet sentence that allowed either party to walk away in writing at any time without penalty. He turned the paper over. He picked up. He wrote one line on the back in a hand that was not entirely steady. I love you. None of this was supposed to be real, but it is. He left the page on the counter and walked out into the sun. Lena came home that afternoon and found the note. She sat with the paper for a long time, the kitchen light moving slowly across the tile. In Ayer's studio beneath a stack of half-finished glazes, she had been writing her own letter for weeks. Hers had ended with the same 3 words. The trust transferred to Adrian 3 days later. Neither of them filed the divorce papers Margaret Cole had quietly drafted. They simply stayed. The Miami Gallery show opened in late 2026, and Lena's work sold out in a single night. Adrian walked away from the family shipping company a month later and founded a small foundation that funds young artists across the country. They live now in a soft white house in Coral Gables, with a sunlit ceramic studio in the back garden and a lemon tree that hums with bees in the late afternoon. Marco drives down every other weekend with thermoses of Cuban coffee, and he sits beneath that lemon tree and watches them work side by side. He carries his own secret still. He never plans to set it down. A reporter from Vanity Fair wrote a long, careful piece about them in early 2027, calling their story one of the most unlikely modern romances of the decade. They've given only one interview, and they spent most of it laughing at how clueless they had been about each other. 2 screenplays, 1 Broadway musical, and a Netflix limited series are quietly in development. Adrian and Lena have refused to lend their names to any of it, but they have not denied a thing. The original contract still rests in a drawer in their kitchen. Both notes are still folded against the back. The love that was meant to be fake became the most real thing either of them had ever known. The money that was supposed to save Adrian became the money that built a life he had never thought to want. And somewhere in Coral Gables tonight, a contract husband and a paper wife are sharing dinner across a small wooden table, laughing about the only deal of their lives that turned into something the world could never buy. If this story found a quiet place in your heart, leave a like so more dreamers can find it. Subscribe for the next love story worth telling slowly. And in the comments, tell us this. If the price was right and the right stranger walked through your door, could you ever sign a contract like Adrian and Lena did?